Hello, friends, neighbors, and fellow New Yorkers. I wanted to speak today about the highly contentious bail reform that's been implemented in our state. Many are rallying together against it, while many others are rallying together in support of it. I'd like to take a few minutes to place it in context, so I hope you'll bear with me as I take a tour through recent history. Let's start with the New York SAFE Act, another highly contentious product of our state government. For the next few minutes, I'd ask you to set aside your love or hate of any particular party, as well as your approval or disapproval of the act itself. Instead, focus on the following. If you watch the debate of the law within the legislature, the one thing that should stand out is that the majority of the legislators did not even understand the vocabulary of the issue. Add to that the fact that it was passed under the provisions of a message of necessity, essentially as an emergency without the typical review of a bill would undergo. Bear in mind that significant portions of the act remain unimplemented today, 7 years later. The only emergency at the time was the governor's personal need to be the first to legislate. Following that, we had the Skelos and Silver show. Legislative leaders, one from each party, mind you, were brought down on corruption charges. They were 2/3 of the infamous 3 men in a room, along with Governor Cuomo, who monopolized state government. All well and good, but the more important fact is this: there are 213 members of the combined legislature, almost all of whom were content to be bystanders as this occurred. Their own ambition and commitment to party on each side required that they play along if they hoped for that next rung on the ladder. Next up, the recent license law, granting licenses to people in the country illegally, which will ultimately be followed by the now pending automatic voter registration law, which interestingly enough contained an error that, according to many news outlets, would have resulted in the automatic voter registration of non-citizens. Now again, for a moment, I ask that you forget party, forget how you feel about whether undocumented residents of the state should receive New York State driver's licenses, or how you feel about automatically enrolling voters. Set all of that aside, and for heaven's sake, take note of how sloppy and irresponsible, or perhaps devious and cunning, our representatives are. Now we return to the present bail reform, passed in the 11th hour, buried in the budget bill, and absent real true debate and scrutiny. Again, love it or hate it, red or blue, donkey or pachyderm, there are only 3 real possibilities that have brought us to where we are. Either many elected representatives did not read the bill, but passed it anyway, most likely because their party handed it to them and they said pass it. Or they read it, but through lack of serious scrutiny did not fully appreciate or consider the effects of passing it. Or they read it and knew exactly what would happen, but passed it anyway. In my mind, and I certainly hope in yours as well, any of those scenarios makes them unsuitable to serve in office. So many legislators are now coming out in support of tweaking or reforming the law. They're using terms like unintended consequences or unforeseen effects. All of these are attempts at self-preservation. The most cursory evaluation of the law would make the effects that we are witnessing clear to the average layman, much less a legislator paid to do the work. Whatever you do, whether you protest or call or write letters or vote or run for office, the elected must not be allowed to escape their irresponsible, self-serving, party-serving ways. All New Yorkers of all stripes must hold our state government accountable. Now, I believe these exact same problems plague our federal government, which is why I'm running for the United States Congress in New York's 18th District. In closing, I have to wonder, does the crime of criminally negligent representation warrant bail or not?